partly the exhausting part of it is thinking that you are responsible and that you could change it if you could come up with the one magic idea that's going to solve it all. And letting go of that is actually liberating and can give you a lot more energy to focus on what you can do and what does need to be done.
Hi, you're listening to Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems.
Big problems, casual conversations.
I know we say this every week, but we've got bigger problems than ever.
Yeah, speaking of problems, how was your weekend?
Look, my weekend could not have been more wild. I cried 90% of Saturday, so that was wild. And then on Sunday, I was in the best mood of my life. I drove to Kmart to click and collect something and put my windows down and put my summer playlist on, and it was the most alive I've felt in weeks.
Oh, Sunday was the day with the brilliant weather, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was like 26.
It's smoky, like hazy. It made the sun like really bright orange.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
Yeah, I posted all over the podcast Instagram and my personal Instagram being like, everybody needs to get on my level, go sit outside in the sun or go for a drive with your windows down, listen to this specific playlist. And I linked my playlist and I just was like, everybody needs to feel like I feel. And I texted Will, who was coming over, being like, if you don't listen to this playlist on the way here, you're not going to be on my level and we're just not going to be matching like on vibes. You need to get on my level right now. I am so in such a good mood.
P.S. Read the Instagram. I have a bone to pick because I noticed that somebody been posting bad photos of me.
To be fair, you only noticed because I told you about it.
No.
And even then, you still ignored my text and only did it on FaceTime when I forced you to look at it. So I feel like I can still post it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's funny, though. There's really bad photos of me. If you see terrible photos of me on our Instagram story, it's because I'm not looking at the Instagram when I should be and Emily's mad at me.
Yes, absolutely. So many of my texts have been going unanswered and I am going to compensate myself with putting bad pictures of you up on the internet.
So listeners, if you follow the Instagram account and you notice that there's a terrible photo of me at the end of a story, please DM me personally.
But also, if the more listeners who submit responses that I can then repost on like our problem of the week and our just regular problems and our listener feedback, the more responses I get, the more bad pictures of Sam I'll put up.
I was going to say, there can't be that many bad photos of me, can there?
I know your mother and your siblings and your best friend. I am also your best friend. Like, we got some bad pictures coming.
Okay. We don't have to go there.
If I run out of content, there are plenty of people in your life that I can contact to get new pictures. Nona, if you're listening, hit me up.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, noted. I'm taking this as a threat. I'm taking this as blackmail.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is legal on a podcast to blackmail me like this.
It's to check your own Instagram.
No, it is fair. It's totally fair. But yeah, please DM me if you see any terrible photos of me, first of all, because it is rude. But yeah.
And on the other note, don't DM him and instead submit more responses so I can post more of them. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. How was your week? Do you have anything to say?
I have nothing to add. I hung out with you via FaceTime on Saturday night. I haven't done anything else. I went to the shops on Sunday.
Risky stuff.
You know, that's all of the socialization I've had throughout the week. And the rest I've just been like poring over, doom scrolling COVID numbers.
Yeah. Which actually is probably a really good segue into this week's episode. I do want to note just before we get into it that this episode was recorded before anything happened with Afghanistan.
Yeah,
so that's why we don't talk about it.
The saddest thing of all time. That hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So this episode we're talking about hopelessness and how we feel awful about the state of the world and like
it's
hopeless
really
and helpless to do anything about it.
It'll really lift your spirits. But you know who will lift your spirits is the guest that we have on, because she does have some great, mechanisms to tackle this kind of feeling that we're all feeling. So it is actually a feel-good episode. So don't...
Hopefully it'll make you feel better. Yeah, if you're feeling the same way as us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without any further ado, I would say we just jump straight into it.
Yeah, please welcome to the podcast. For the second time, our first repeat guest, it's Annie Falcke.
Woo. Is further ado the right phrase? I'm second guessing it.
Further ado.
Further ado?
Yeah, look.
Without any further talking from us, let's get into the episode where there's more talking from us.
It's further ADO, like further ado. Without further ado.
It's mush now in my brain.
Means immediately. You know? So immediately, let's welcome to the podcast. Annie, you're our first returning guest we've ever had on.
Yeah.
Yay.
I was going to say, welcome back.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be back.
Yeah, first returning guest with a huge, huge problem to solve for us. We can skip the intro because they know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting.
And if you don't, go back and listen to the other episode.
That's right.
If you haven't heard Annie's episode, you better go catch up right now. There's going to be a test midway through. So go catch up. And if you have listened to our previous episode, you'll know why. I'm just quickly setting a timer. There we go.
Is this to keep us honest, the timer? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we'll talk for 4 hours.
I want to go to bed. Yeah. It's 8:20. We all joined at 8 o'clock and we've just spent 20 minutes talking about the pandemic. So yeah, this is going to be good. I'm excited.
No more of that.
No more. Okay. The problem today is I don't know how to word it except for saying it personally. I feel hopeless about the state of the world, particularly climate change, but also even what we're talking about there, the politics of the pandemic. Am I ever going to get out of the pandemic? And if I do get out of the pandemic, like, what's it going to be like? And like, I just feel hopeless. Help me, please.
You're not alone either there. I just want to also add, I'm also feeling that way.
And I've seen a lot of rhetoric online about the IPCC report came out and I've just seen so many people
I still have not read that. That looks terrifying. I haven't read it. I've just seen people talk about it. It's not content that I feel strong enough to consume. Yeah.
But
Annie, have you read the report?
The world is burning.
Yeah, I did read the IPCC. I've been following that one for a long time.
Yeah. Can you give us a quick summary or your thoughts on it maybe?
Look, I think the report is telling us exactly what we thought it was going to tell us. From years ago, we are exactly on the trajectory that we were expected to be on. But that also means that we are exactly on the same trajectory of possibilities for acting and getting some results. I think the ship sailed a little while ago about completely reversing the situation, and there's a general acceptance that to a certain degree we won't avoid fairly significant change in the climate. The challenge is really to try and minimise it, and that is still within the window of possibility. But the report really lays out exactly what would be required to keep it to 1.5 degrees, which is looking less and less likely. Now, there's nothing terribly melodramatic about the report. If you've been following along, there's nothing more extreme than we thought. There's nothing more hopeful than we thought. It's just basically on track. But it does kind of highlight some of the tipping points that we're close to. And I don't want to really go into the details because it's all there and written out in a better way than what I can explain. I think sometimes those visual graphs and things are helpful to understand them more than a verbal explanation. But I think you two have a very good knack of asking me to talk about things that I need to think about myself. And when I got, when you mentioned this idea of hopelessness, that is like the worst possible topic you could ask me to talk about right now.
Sorry. Are you feeling similar?
But also,
how are you feeling?
We talked on the phone about this for 40 minutes. When it was supposed to be a 10-minute chat. So I feel like you've got a lot to say. Yeah.
I think I don't ever feel hopeless completely, but I get this sense of disappointment, I think, that or frustration. Like there's a lot of emotions layered in there. I think because I don't believe in hope as a concept.
Oh my God. Well, that means you can't believe in hopelessness, because if it's never there in the first place, how can you be without it?
It's like peace. It's something you aim for, but it's not a state that you can reach. It's not something that's tangible. I think.
What about if I just said utter despair?
And apathy.
Yeah. Okay. So look, I did some reading for you. Now, hope and hopelessness, there's three main things apparently that create a sense of hope. They are a sense of power or agency over your own life. The second thing is a sense of connection. And the third thing is a sense of safety. So the reverse of that,
so having none of
hopelessness is if you feel powerless, you can't change what's going on. If you feel alienated and disconnected, and if you feel doom, that you worry for your survival, those are the three ingredients needed for hope. So
that's what I feel.
All right, okay.
So what I'm saying is it's perfectly rational and intelligent to feel hopeless right now.
Okay, and so smart people is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
And we should feel this way.
I did want to say straight up, this is the caveat for the show, is that we need to be clear about a sense of personal despair versus a sense of despair for others. When you feel hopeless for the world, for other people, for society, that is a degree of empathy. What you're feeling is empathy for the world and empathy for others and empathy for society, this challenge that we're all going through and that we're going into. That is quite a distinct feeling from I feel hopeless about my own life and I may not want to continue. So I want to just say that in that sense, I believe I try and maintain a sense of personal hope for myself, but I don't necessarily believe in that hope for society is this guaranteed thing. Hope is something I aim for. It's something we try and build, much like peace. We try and aim for it. We try and make decisions that lead to it for the world, for each other. But it's not something that...
Can that empathetic kind of hope for the world, though, kind of bleed into your personal kind of feel? I feel like that might be what's happening.
It can. It totally can. You can be...
When you're trapped in lockdown all the time and you're looking at world events constantly, your personal and the world kind of view, like, I feel like that's half of what... I'm not sure how far away this will air from the Bo Burnham episode, but we talked about it in the Bo Burnham episode of how, these feeds that we're constantly consuming, the flattening of the entire human experience as you scroll through it, the personal and the world view is kind of almost the same.
Yeah, and that's a mistake. You've got to separate them out completely.
Is that possible?
Yes. You've just got to spend less time connected to the world and connected to other people. Alienation can be your friend in the sense that having some degree of a sense of your own personality and autonomy and control over your own experience, you can exist somewhat in a bubble. You can protect yourself. When you become too empathetic and your self-identity bleeds out into the world and you start taking all of that politics in personally and the experiences of other people in personally, that can be quite dangerous. And I think that's a lot of work that counsellors and psychologists do, is learning to build those boundaries and protect yourself from, to create that really strong personal identity and personal experience separate to what you're observing and witnessing out in the world.
How would that translate into like lockdown though?
I guess what I think it's really important. It's really important to understand that you're not supposed to feel good right now. Like, it's a completely artificial situation that you're in. It's what's important is to acknowledge that as much as it feels like it's going to last forever, it is temporary.
Okay, but I feel more like pandemic-wise, it doesn't feel like it now, but I'm sure we'll get through it and I'm sure everything will be fine. And, a year from now, hopefully we won't even think about this. But like in terms of climate change, like I don't know that it's possible to separate myself and the world in that sense, because me personally picking up every piece of rubbish that I come across and buying secondhand clothes isn't going to do anything. I need other people. I need the rest of the world to make a difference in terms of climate change. And so, like, that feels very hard to separate the two bubbles there.
It is. And I think the way I've described this to myself is that to a certain degree, you have to go through a process of grieving for perhaps your own worldview, the way you thought the world worked. Part of this empathy and part of the emotional state that you're in is you would have done anyway. As someone your age going through life, you start to question and realize how the world really works.
Yeah, what a myth your 20s are.
Yeah, you start off your adult life with a certain understanding of how things work, how people make decisions, how governments make decisions, how companies make decisions. And this is sort of, it starts to unravel through your adult life. You start to get more of a sense of how things really work. And when things change really quickly, or you become aware of things really quickly, a sense of disappointment or grief kicks in, because you really wanted to believe that the world was a much better place than perhaps it is, or it was a fairer place. And things I think about are, what am I particularly disappointed in, right? Like why am I particularly frustrated? Because I had this idea growing up myself that there was some justice, that things were fair, that good people get their own eventually, that people make the right decisions.
You have a go, you get a go.
Well, that there's a system, out there, some magical system where justice rules. I probably believed in the meritocracy. I probably believed that if you were a capable person and you had a go, you'd get a go. I probably believed that in my younger days. I definitely believed that effort would equal reward. I definitely believed that democracy equaled representative decision-making, for example. I definitely believed that science was a really good method of collating data and making evidence-based decisions. I definitely believe that.
Hang on, but that is still true, right? No, okay, well, science is science.
Science is science. I don't necessarily believe that everyone in decision-making roles understands the role of science the way I thought.
Sure.
I thought science was quite a straightforward thing to accept.
Yeah,
that you just acknowledge, right. That that's a really good knowledge system.
I thought that maybe you were kind of starting to tread down the line of anti-vax type crap.
Don't you dare entrap me in that net.
That's why I was nervous.
No.
You said I don't know. Yeah, no, right. The decision making, Yeah,
I honestly thought that was just a generally accepted tool that we would all use to get information and make decisions on behalf of communities. I thought that was a really solid method that people trusted.
Yeah, well, this might veer off a little bit now because that whole thing of decision making and, agreeing on what a fact is out the window at the moment.
That's right.
If we can't agree on what a fact is, how can we make any decisions and have any kind of civil discourse? What do we do there?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly didn't understand bias in the media. I certainly, I didn't necessarily appreciate that, I have a little bleeding heart, a little socialist heart that wants, good for everybody, but that not everyone is motivated by this idea of the common good. And I don't know, but I feel like most people would be surely most people want to be good. They want to be good, but whether they want the outcome that's best for everybody versus the outcome that's best for themselves.
You can't look at Sydney and think that everybody believes in the common good.
No, okay. So the common good, it's how you define it, but I do think that everyone believes they are doing the right thing.
Totally. And that's one of my fundamental core beliefs. I do think that people at their core want to be good people.
Yeah.
They want to be accepted and respected by their communities. They want to be connected to their families. They want to have those positive relationships, and that comes from being held in esteem by the people around them. I do think that is true. But these are some of my worldviews that over time have been challenged. I'm not saying I've thrown them all out the window, but these are the things that as you start to get questions about these fundamental assumptions about how the world works, you start to feel a little bit of hope drain away. I've noticed this in my, over the last 20 years, is that every year something I thought was just really obvious or really, this is how the world works, is just challenged. And I think, oh, maybe that's not how it is. Maybe there is a lot of selfishness, or maybe there is a lot of distrust. Maybe there's a lot of, and those little bits of grief kick in about, I wish the world was different. I wish that society was different.
I feel like a lot of the actions and behaviors that have come from this pandemic and, like the riots against lockdowns, all this kind of thing, have really kind of those are the kind of triggers for challenging those values and ideologies.
It's been in a very accelerated, compressed time frame.
Yeah.
This whole situation has challenged a lot of the global systems that are in place, economic systems, political systems, social systems. And we're seeing very clearly laid out before us what is truly valuable to governments, what's truly valuable to individuals, what's valuable to business.
But we can also see what's valuable to our general well-being.
Correct.
And we can see what is lacking there. And it is so frustrating when it's painfully obvious. Everything's painted out there for you. We can all see it, and we can't achieve a solution because of the systems blocking it.
That's right. But that's why there's this powerlessness and this sense of loss or disappointment or grief about this hopeful future that was based on justice and the common good and everyone reaching, a hand out to each other. It's really hard to let that ideology go and accept that maybe that's not how the world is structured. I'm not saying we have to accept that reality, but
are you kind of suggesting that, like, we kind of just need to accept that sometimes the world is shit? We just kind of accept that? I'm only asking because, like,
well, what else can you do?
How do we still be? I mean, we just released our episode with Georgia about how to be a good person. How do we still be good people in ourselves and just accept that the world is shit?
Well, it's not a binary situation. It's either good or it's shit. It's somewhere
those two things
in
would
the
be mutually exclusive either, would they?
No, the world is not a universally positive place. There is suffering, there is grief, there is injustice, there are political fights to be had. There is so much social justice to be examined and fought for. There's so much inequity. There's so much poverty, income inequality. There is so much work left to do. It's work, though.
You're making me feel way better.
But the thing is, it's always been there. It's just becoming aware of it. And it's because you care. It's because you're empathetic. So the inequality in the world has always been there. It's ebbed and flowed and it's changed locations, but there has always been a divide between the wealthy and the poor. The global poverty rates are far lower now than ever before in history. There's less people in absolute poverty now than ever before. That is a good thing, but still there is poverty. So still we need to care about it. There's been never before the kind of gender equality that we know today. But that doesn't mean that we're anywhere near done with that. The thing is, all of these issues are on a timeline. We're not finished with anything. And the more you become aware of the world, the more you start to realize how much work there is to do. And some things are improving over time and some things are deteriorating over time. The climate is one thing that is deteriorating over time. A lot of other things are tracking up slowly, frustratingly slowly. They're tracking up, but climate is not tracking up. And that one is a particularly hard one for me to cope with because in that sense, I have certainly accepted that I need to stop fighting for something that's not achievable and start caring about things that are achievable with that. I've accepted a degree of
you mean
loss.
Like personally, it's out of your control. You need to accept that and kind of focus on what is in your control?
Yeah. I think, this is part of the way that we're all raised is that we think that if we care about something and we get up and we have a go and we say, that we can change the world. We were all raised like that. But that is not true, actually. It's far more complicated than that. And that's partly been my ego calming down and saying, you can't do this all on your own. You can't take all of the responsibility on your own. And you also can't blame any other individual person for not doing it all either. It's not all the Prime Minister's fault. It's not all anyone's fault. It's just a failure of global cooperation, really. And so partly the exhausting part of it is thinking that you are responsible and that you could change it if you could come up with the one magic idea that's going to solve it all. And letting go of that is actually liberating and can give you a lot more energy to focus on what you can do.
I don't think that I've ever really been hung up on how I can individually impact climate change.
I have, for sure.
It's not uncommon that people think that they could be Greta. They could be the global leader.
I don't think that, but I do get hung up on am I doing enough recycling? If I stopped wearing fast fashion, maybe that would make a difference.
It won't.
I get really hung up on those things because I kind of go into I have lots of control issues. And so I go, okay, well, this is a huge issue that really, really, really gives me a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the only things that I can control, but those things are tiny and they do nothing.
That's right. So this is one of the greatest lessons in adulthood, really, is understanding the limits, the boundaries of your power. If you do not put yourself in a position of power, you have to accept where you've put yourself. If you go and you chase a particular, let's say you go and you do a master's in public administration, you do master's in environment, you become an advisor to this person, you start to, put yourself in a room full of decision makers, then you can feel more responsibility for making those decisions. But if you are going about your life in the suburbs, living your best life, how much power do you have? You have power over your spend. You have power over your fashion. You've got power over your food.
We could go to university and do all those things, and then it's almost a choice at that point that we're powerless. And that
you have to accept that you have a limit to your influence, and you can't have any more influence than the rooms you're in. Yeah. So if you can't weasel your way into a room and you can't bring the expertise and the right argument into that space, you can't expect to change the world from behind the keyboard on Twitter. It's not that simple, but the
way that you're describing it there almost feels like you could put yourself in those situations. You're just not good enough.
It's not that you're not good enough. It's just that you haven't.
To me, it feels like there's not enough time. If I thought that me doing all those things would save the world, I would do it. But it's like the world's burning faster than I can study and do all those things.
This is not a judgment on anyone. It's looking at who has the power to make the decisions and working back from there. So for me, I think I have to get involved in local politics at this point, right? Because if the politicians have the power and I'm not interacting with the politicians, I can't expect to influence them, right? You've got to participate in that democratic process somehow if you want to influence more than just the products you're buying.
How does local government impact climate change, though?
Surprisingly a lot. So you've got to, if you think about the fact that all planning applications go through local government and most land clearing is happening because of planning and development, it's all local government that's causing habitat clearance and native vegetation clearance.
We had a road thing. There's going to be land clearing for this, but it's federal. They did put out a survey for it, but it will go ahead regardless. Our area is notorious for trying to get development to stop because they want to keep the area semi-rural or whatever.
Yep.
But the government is going gung-ho on this stuff.
That's right.
They just want to develop. They want to develop.
That could be something you can't have a lot of influence in. But what I'm trying to say without any judgment is that you've got to understand where you can have an impact.
Yeah.
And if you only consume federal media, federal politics, you're going to think that that's where all the decisions are happening. And you can't personally impact federal politics. So listening to it can make you feel hopeless. Whereas if you start looking at what's the state government doing, what's my local government doing, what's happening at a local level, you can absolutely influence that because no one is paying attention. The other things that are happening at a local government level are waste management. That sounds really boring, but if every local government area put in a composting system, my local area has done that. The 5 shires around me, we compost all our green waste and we have for 5 years, and it's halved our landfill and drastically reduced all the carbon emissions from organic matter in the waste. That was made at a local level. There's actually a lot, and it seems not as sexy, but it is still really important stuff that happens locally that very few people pay attention to.
Yeah, that almost seems like that's really cool. It's almost like individual responsibility is making up for a lack of federal policy, because it could be could be a federal or a state policy.
It could be
something like that.
But without sounding like a politician, it's also not the federal government's responsibility to think about waste. It is a local government thing. So if you want to look at how the zoning laws work and how, which bits of land are marked for clearance, which things are heritage listed, which things are listed for environmental, it's all happening at a local level, and it's all done in a very transparent way. You're asked for feedback constantly from your local council. They can't make a single decision without the citizens of that area weighing in. So you're given heaps of opportunity to show up, and they love when you show up actually and make comments. So that to me has been really empowering, is actually just paying attention to where I actually can have influence, because it was kind of naive of me to think that sharing a Facebook post about something Scott Morrison has done was going to make any difference on Scott Morrison's
This is what drives me
agenda.
When watching the New South Wales press conferences every morning, there's the all of the live comments going through. Everyone's so angry who comments on there, and I'm like, what are you trying to accomplish by saying all this stuff? Because you're clearly not trying to sway opinion. And if you do think you are swaying opinion, then I mean, you're a moron. Has your opinion ever been changed by a live comment?
Yeah, and
no one's.
That's right. And if you are finding that you're not changing many minds when you're talking to people about an issue, you might have spoken to 20 people about universal basic income, and none of them think it's a good idea. No. Anyone who I've ever spoken to about UBI knows it's a good idea. Thank you very much. It's a good idea too. That's a bad example because that is universally excellent. Let's say,
listeners, if you don't know what UBI is, go look it up. It's so good.
If you are finding that you're not very successful in having conversations with people about vaccination is one at the moment, I make sure I go and read articles and read health advice about how to have effective conversations about this issue. What are the biggest causes of hesitation with this issue? And if you can inform yourself and really practice and have the knowledge, you can improve your capacity to have those conversations. So I guess what I'm saying is find where you can have impact. Often it is those kitchen table conversations with people that are the most powerful thing you can do, using the relationship.
I mean, that's what everyone said about the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Is that if all we do is talk to our family about it and have the conversation in our homes, that's still a big thing.
Yeah. Change is painfully slow. And if you can change just 5 or 10 people, that's a really good result. But you need to be really well prepared for those conversations, and you need to understand and validate, or at least, really listen to the perspective that they're coming from and really address their concerns and be very empathetic about the entire process, because it is an incredibly generous thing for someone to leave behind their cultural position. No matter what you think of it, it's been a safe place for them, psychologically a safe place. And you're asking them to go out into the unknown, into a new place where they don't know, they don't feel safe and they don't feel comfortable. And supporting them along that journey is really important. And you can do some work around that you don't have to get a university degree or anything, but you can prepare yourself for those conversations. So all I'm saying is don't get frustrated because you can't influence the people that you're not in the room with. You got to be in the room. So who are you in a room with? Where is the boundaries of your influence? And then given that, if you can understand where you do have some influence, be prepared, actually prepare yourself to be effective in those situations and be empathetic and be informed and be sensitive to what is actually required to create change in the world.
Can I ask if you have an example of you going through that at all?
Well, it's not necessarily about changing people's minds, but going right through from the beginning of where their concerns are and listening, and then going through each of those things one at a time and very gently, and what about this and what about that? A lot of people in the country know a farmer that's been keeping rain records since 1920. And that one farmer that they know says that there's been no change in the rain patterns, that this is just a normal cycle. And they'll believe that one farmer more strongly because they know that farmer, they trust that farmer, he's a good bloke. They'll trust that information more so than the IPCC report, because that's people they don't know and they don't trust and they don't understand how the whole scientific method works. And I'm not blaming anyone in that breakdown, but I think it's got to have a degree of, I guess it's not compassion. You have to have a degree of understanding that you're operating on a slightly different cognitive
Look, I entirely agree with what you're saying. I'm trying to get to kind of a semblance of a solution somewhere.
Yeah.
And
can I tell you a boring answer?
Yeah.
I explain science. It takes a couple of years.
Yeah.
Explaining how that works has been really helpful with the few key people that I've been able to influence over the years. It's just introducing the concept of multiple data points over multiple timeframes, like verifying data sets, just how that works, because it's surprisingly not well understood. I think that there's another generation that thought that scientists were like in a laboratory with test tubes and they weren't statisticians. And science is mainly about data and statistics. It's not about boiling things up in a Bunsen burner and making weird concoctions. So that's been really helpful. And also just not shaming people, because they're never going to talk to you if they feel
100%. Look, I think the first thing you have to do is listen, and you have to agree with some kind of point. You have to, you're going to have common ground with literally everyone you meet. And I think you have to find some kind of compromise or common ground that you can agree on.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to go all the way back to, I want to survive to next week, I don't know, there's always something.
Yeah.
And listening. And then if they say batshit crazy stuff, I find what works is ask them enough questions till they shoot themselves in the foot, because it's going to happen. If they're like, I don't know what crazy thing, they're putting GPS trackers in the vaccine. You go, okay, well, what is the government going to do with us once they're controlling us? Immediately, none of them have thought that far. Why do they want to control us?
Yeah.
It's a barrier.
It is, but as my experience is that 90% of the people that are hesitant on climate, on any issue, they're not people with those kind of extreme ideas. They're people that are just a little bit reluctant to leave the safe, happy land that they were in. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What views about how the world works are you questioning right now?
I don't know if I'm questioning. I think I've formed some solid ideas. I don't know what I've questioned recently.
Is there something you thought was like, this is how the world works, and now you're like, why isn't everyone doing it the way I thought it worked?
I feel like the 2016 American election is where that all started for me. And I've since gone down a long series of different, And
what about that election result felt counterintuitive to you? What about that made no sense?
I couldn't understand, because to me, I'd never met a bad person before. In my, how old was I then? 21. In my, that's enough time to have met plenty of people. I'd traveled the world, and I'd never met someone who was truly had bad intentions ever. And to me, the man that was elected was a truly evil man. And I went, how can 76 million people be evil? And I was like, they can't be. So how is this work? So I had to go through, I almost rebuild my entire idea of how the world worked from there. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of something that was challenged was, is everyone good? And I've managed to reconvince myself that, I think everyone does have good intentions, and will justify that in their own ways. But yeah, is that kind of what you're asking? I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I'm interested really where, like, if we reframe this as disappointment, like how are other people disappointing you right now?
Oh, for me, like it's the people in power that are disappointing me right now. Like specifically, the Liberal Party in both state and federal politics is really disappointing because they're very reactive. They're not proactive. I can understand how in some situations some people would prefer these parties in power. Like I can, because I've had to really figure that out. But yeah, the individualism, like my rights are more important than the communities. Like, like I should be able to go to a restaurant without a vaccine passport and all these kinds of ideas of, my rights first, individual rights first. That is disappointing to me. That's really disappointing.
So I guess what I'm asking is, are you feeling hopeless because of other people, or are you feeling hopeless because of yourself?
Yeah, well, I don't know how much we want to get into therapizing, but it is interesting because it very much changes the way we talk about it. If all of your locus of control is external, then you're always going to be conflicted. My hopelessness definitely comes from my own personal life and is bleeding out, I think, the other way. But I don't know that we need to get into that.
No. So, okay, to answer your question, how I think about hopelessness, I think in terms of dealing with this disappointment with the world and my lack of ability to, influence it and impact it as much as I'd like, I think what I can take away from my life so far is that the world is a far worse place than I thought and a far better place than I knew. It's both of the things at the same time. I only see a fraction of what goes on. And I've learnt to look past the headlines and actually look at both the good news stories and the headlines and the current affairs that are going on. And I've had to really actively change my media diet. The media will make you crazy. You have to change what sources of information you are receiving, and not these blog instant stuff, but the long form journalism that goes right into the issue, that explains the nuance of things.
Long form journalism.
Yep.
What is that? I listen to some political podcasts, which I love. Mm-hmm. I don't know many of them or many good ones, but it's really hard to find that.
It is. Essays.
Political essays? Or
political essays, things like the Quarterly Essay, things like the Guardian Weekly magazine.
But in a time where you're being updated with news every day, and it's important to be updated with news every day.
Is it though? I'm not convinced.
Well, our restrictions are changing.
Restrictions is one thing.
Are they? They haven't changed in.
They're going to change again.
I'll let you check restrictions, but in terms of getting a digest on the Liberal Party's latest platform, what is their climate policy? You're not going to get that in a news bite. You need to have a look at a full essay and a full analysis of what their activity has been over a 4-year cycle. You need to have a look back at the history of the attempt at carbon emissions trading schemes over the last 15 years and compare that against other countries.
I appreciate all that, but there's these political issues that are happening on a day-to-day basis with regards to current events that you can't get an essay on.
You can.
Can you?
Yes, all newspapers.
Just not instantly.
All newspapers will do like a weekly long article about a current issue. I get the Guardian Weekly. It's a print magazine and it has long articles about stuff that's happened that week. But instead of just reporting what happened in the last hour, it catches you up on the whole week and it gives context for the year or the month around the issue and sort of digests it and discusses it in a more long form way. I find it incredibly helpful because often you'll get this snap, like it'll say, 200 girls returned from their kidnapping. How good? And then you're like, what? 200 girls were kidnapped? And then you don't ever get the full story of what is happening in Nigeria. How did that, what is the political situation there? What do you mean there's girls being kidnapped? You don't get the full picture. And so it just makes it feel
Palestine
random.
Versus
Israel. Yeah. Really good example.
That went crazy for a week, didn't it? And people had really, really strong opinions that were leveled.
I struggled to catch up. I struggled to form my own opinion because I struggled to figure out what was going on.
That's right.
People got cancelled over it, like everyone's expected to become an expert in a 20-year war overnight.
Yeah. This is the sort of stuff where it's best not to look at stuff in isolation unless you're really familiar with the issue. A little bit of information, you can put it in a long story, but overall, you're going to feel much more sane if you read the whole thing, because otherwise these kind of disasters start to feel random. They start to feel like anything could happen at any time, that the world has gone mad, that everything's disintegrating, when they're all actually part of a long arc, a long story arc.
Yo, it's some bonus content. I think even this is all well and good as well. Like this is great to have intentions to do this. And like, as I said, I have intentions to try to take in more long form content. Anything with more nuance is excellent. But when I live online in lockdown, and you can say you shouldn't or whatever, but it's just the way that it is now. The algorithm is ruthless. Like, how do you avoid, like, you can't.
Okay. So as a start, just
put it down.
Try not to go onto Twitter. Go onto the ABC News app and don't go on their blog. Go on their articles.
Yeah.
There's little things you can do if you need to just quickly check things.
This all takes emotional bandwidth and availability.
I know, but we're talking about an emotional issue. So change your media diet. That's my first tip.
I'm saying that if you're, I don't want to get too much into my mental well-being, but if you don't have the mental capacity to, make decisions, to direct your focus somewhere, and you're literally just opening an app to get release or whatever, get that serotonin, it's unavoidable. All these different sources of short form clickbait information and corruption for your mind. And I think that everyone during lockdown is taking this in.
It is.
But anyway.
But it's also why everyone's losing their minds. And it would be irresponsible of me not to actually say the information you take in is what your brain's going to cycle on. So if it's cycling on that doom information, just change your media diet and look at the like a really good piece of advice I got a few years ago was to flip your media diet from 80 federal, 10 local or state to the opposite. So 80 local, 20 federal. I now read my local paper every day, every single day. And it gives me a lot of hope. There's so much going on, so many people trying really hard in the local area to really improve things. It can feel like no one is doing anything if you only look at politicians. Yeah. There's a lot of people doing a lot of work on every single one of these issues, but you got to find them and read them and follow them. You can be quite intentional about curating your Twitter feed, your Instagram feed, and just cast off those ones that are just, dishing you up with doom stuff. It's not, I don't want to redirect you from what you care about. It's not a matter of distracting you onto more positive news. It's not a positive psychology message. It's a reality check to make sure you're getting the full breadth of what is actually going on in the world and not just what the news agencies and the apps want you to see, so that you stay on there and panic and, just keep engaging.
I think I'm being completely honest with myself. I think it's actually really, it's not that it's fun, but it is engaging and entertaining to keep up with.
Outrage is addictive.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it gives your ego a little boost when you feel superior to the people who are on the other side.
Exactly.
It's very addictive. And when you feel yourself getting into that outrage, it does require some discipline, but you have to sort of train yourself to withdraw and look at the full issue and find out what is in the middle between those two extreme ends of the argument, because it's actually really interesting. And that when you start reading that content, you might find it is engaging enough that you don't miss the clickbait.
Next segment, we've got some listener despair coming to you. I asked the listeners to send in their concerns about the state of the world. So let's go rapid fire if you can.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, first one. I'm worried about the economy for people our age in 5 to 10 years' time trying to get houses.
Wait, that wasn't a question?
Well, fix it. As if that's what you're here for, isn't it, Annie? Just to fix it.
I would be too. Housing is a real problem, and it's really important to engage in conversations about urban densification and affordable housing, and really look at the taxation system that benefits too many landholders and not first home property buyers. It's a terrifying statistic to see how many second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth mortgages were issued versus first mortgages from banks. And it is I would be also very, very concerned. I moved to regional Australia to afford a house, and I can't imagine what you guys are going to have to do.
Oh, what
I just anticipate moving.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would just never, I don't even have a thought in my head that I'm ever going to own property. It's just not an aspiration of mine.
Yeah. Also, it doesn't have to be the way the world works. Maybe we don't own properties. Maybe we don't own land. Maybe none of us should own land. There are other ways of distributing.
It is the way the
my
world
family
works.
doesn't, so I don't see it as a necessity, I guess.
Yeah. That's a really big conversation, but
rapid fire. What's next?
Okay. I'm concerned that people have hit their peak and are getting angrier. And this person works in retail.
Have hit their peak? What does that mean? Like, what do you think that means?
They're just the angriest. You know, they've reached the limit of what they'll take. They're the angriest.
Oh, right.
Sorry if I interpreted that wrong.
No, I think they've reached their limit mentally and they're all just angry.
I don't want to say anything inflammatory at this point, but it's hard for us as a generation that have never been put through a challenge like this before. But there are lots of communities all around the world that go through challenges far worse than this every day of the week. And we've just been so lucky up until this point not to have such challenging conditions. It's true that people are reaching their peak. It's just how long it's been going on. But my personal thing, my mantra is to think about, living in one of those cities during, like living in London during the Blitz and what that would have been like, the suspense over that period of time. This is not the first time humans have faced challenges, and it won't be the last. And as much as people are angry, I think we just need to all try and find some perspective.
Okay, next one. I'm afraid that people's mental health will get even worse even after this settles down.
I think that's fair. I think people will really feel unstable for a long time, and the ramifications of rapid social change will be felt for a whole generation. And the importance of really coming together and building cohesion has never been more important than now.
Yeah. Is this the end of the international order? Will travel ever be safe again? Is democracy flawed? I don't know if they're supposed to be separate ones.
Is democracy flawed?
You could probably go one at a time on those.
Yeah, international travel will absolutely resume. People will just accept a higher level of risk when they travel. Is democracy flawed? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Is this the end of the international order?
I don't know what the international order is.
Me either. Okay, good. I don't feel as bad
I think,
now.
do they mean the global world order? Let's not go there.
Well, that's always fluctuating, isn't it? I guess it has been.
Come and see us in our comments, person who sent this in. You know who you are. I also know who you are.
I think.
Come and see us in our comments and give us more context.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't even want to touch on it. I was going to try.
Okay.
I won't bother.
I'm concerned about Australia losing faith in our leaders and turning to the media for guidance when the media isn't equipped to lead and can easily spread misinformation.
Valid. I think that is a real challenge of our generation, is to learn how to hold politicians to account, but also to allow politicians to fail and change their minds in the public eye without hailing on them. Because the reason that they obfuscate is because the media and the community just jump down their throats immediately. We need to be more forgiving of our politicians so that they can pivot, they can change their mind, they can learn and change their position without being called flip-floppers, or, you know, we really punish politicians for changing their mind, which doesn't really help us change their minds. So we have to become more forgiving, hold them to account, but allow them to change their mind and encourage that, and encourage the media not to jump down their throat when they change their point of view on something.
But you know what I would say that encourages the media to jump down their throat is capitalism, is the system that we're a part of. So how can you...
Well, it's because
it's also just the way media works.
It's because the people...
I'm literally doing a subject about that right now. I just read all about Noam Chomsky's. Like, that's how the media works. They're supposed to be the fourth estate. They're supposed to keep the politicians accountable.
Democracy only
works. Jumping down their throats and keeping them accountable is... And I understand what Annie was saying, but I'm just saying... What gets clicks is engagement and is outrage. And so they will ask the same question 4 times until a politician snaps, and then put that in a headline.
Yeah.
And then ask the person that was about to respond to it 4 times until they snap back. And then slammed. Can we remove the word slammed from journalism's vocabulary? Because it pisses me off. This is a separate point. But slams and all those like inflammatory kind of words in headlines.
Yeah. As much as I get frustrated with politicians, I'm more frustrated with the media. They're the only thing we have to keep politicians accountable, and they're not doing their job, and we are supporting that. We are encouraging their behaviour by clicking on the outrage and clicking on the headlines.
Are we encouraging that behaviour by participating in a system that we were born into? Like, is it our fault? That's like, you know, capitalism bad.
It's not our fault, but again, it's like the thing we can control. The only way we can communicate to them.
I don't know what to say to you. I can say, no, it's not your fault. But if you feel powerless, this is something you can influence. This is something you can do.
It's a really similar argument to like, if you hate capitalism, but you bought an iPhone. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm existing within a system that I don't like.
I know. This is the dissonance of adulthood. You're always going to be living in conflict.
I'm just saying that the advice to not like participate in media is just not doable.
I'm not saying not to participate in it, but try not to reward bad behaviour. So journalists that are doing a really good job writing a really long, well-informed article, click on that one. Read it.
I mean, it's the classic thing of like, I could support The Guardian by contributing financially, but I won't, and instead I'll click on all the things.
I feel like it's an individual responsibility argument against something that individual responsibility plays next to no part in.
Well, what if I gave you the opposite answer? You can't do anything, Sam. We just have to wait for the media to change. Would that make you feel better?
No, but I'm not. I'm just saying it's not the right response necessarily. Maybe there's a different solution. I'm not saying the other. The only alternative.
Both are true. We need to encourage better journalism. We need to encourage better user behaviour also. Both things are true. Same with the environment. We take our own responsibility over our actions, but we also have to encourage broader actions on the collective level. It's not an either or. It's a both, an and.
Okay, next question. 2 years in lockdown and my travel list has just gotten longer. Where should I go first? This one and the next one are just fun ones.
Because it's winter right now and it's miserable, I'd be going somewhere tropical and warm.
If I could have my pick of right now today, I'd be going to Hawaii.
Tahiti.
Yeah. I think I'd go somewhere new, somewhere warm that I hadn't been. Maybe the back blocks of Java.
Okay.
Where is Java?
Where are you going, Sam? Tahiti?
No, wait, where's Java? What? What's Java?
Indonesia.
Okay, thank you.
Nice and close. I haven't been there before. good to explore.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
You already know. I'm going somewhere where I can ride on a
Ski
hill. Yes, I need to snowboard.
Ride on a hill. Copy that. All right. This is the last question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned that one day Sam and Em won't have any more problems and I'll miss you.
Well, we know that's never the case.
Humble brag.
Overflowing with problems. Thank you very much. I will never not have problems.
And that's it on terms of listener problems.
Cool. I'm not going to answer that. I don't think either of you are at any loss for finding some problems to solve.
Such a good.
And arguably, you're always one problem more because of it, because you're the go-to person.
Look, I don't know if I answered your questions at all about hopelessness. Do you feel like you haven't?
It helps to know that someone older than us is still thinking about this, you know, like it's not just a me thing. It helps to know that other people are dealing with this and nobody has a solution, and there are tips and tricks and we can all try to focus on what we can. I really liked knowing, you know, I can't ever expect to change the minds of people I'm not in the room with. That was really, that's the takeaway for me.
I really appreciated the breakdown of the 3 macros that kind of contribute towards it, and being aware of those things personally and at a global level, I think.
Yeah.
Really interesting way to look at it.
It is. And without playing any blame, you need to find your power where it really is, not where your aspirational power is, but where your power actually is. Even the boring power that you have.
Yeah. Where you're comfortable. You know, if you're comfortable having your power level at you only affect change in your family home and don't do anything else, then that's what it is. You just have to be comfortable with that. If you're not comfortable with that, then you need to figure out where you want to affect change, where you can, what rooms you can get yourself into.
Yeah. And
can we just sum up? Sorry, there's the powerlessness aspect. What were the other 2 again?
The second point is, so I'll go through them again. The 3 components of hopelessness are a sense of powerlessness or a lack of agency over your own life.
Yep.
The second point is alienation or isolation, or a feeling that you're alone in your struggle. Mm-hmm. The third is a feeling of doom or a fear of survival. That's a very primal fear that you may not survive.
Safety. Yeah.
Yep. So looking at all 3 of those things, you know, finding like-minded people and knowing you're not alone in these feelings of doom and despair, that we're all worried about this stuff, but that together we can find some collective power, some individual power, and that even if things go belly up, we will all be in it together still, and we'll solve those problems as they come. It's not going to be a switch that flicks off and we all demise overnight. There will be a period of time that we all adapt to, and we will all continue to work together to solve each problem as it comes. And as unfun a reality as that is, we will be okay in that together. Even if the world is not okay in the end, we can only aim to hold our heads up and keep our values and be empathetic and innovative through all of those things together, and we'll be okay.
Okay, so let's jump straight into recommendations. Does anybody want to start?
I don't want to start this week because I don't have anything yet, but I will have something.
Okay, I'll start. And this is completely unrelated to anything we've talked about. I came to the realization the other day that I haven't talked about this yet, and it is one of the only things that has gotten me through this year. Like, it has been one of the most important things to me in this year. And it is a book series called Throne of Glass. That's the first one. I'm not quite sure what. I think the series is just called Throne of Glass. It's by Sarah J. Maas, and it is incredible. Like, I finished the books and genuinely thought to myself, I may never read anything as good as that again. And to be fair, it tainted the next book that I read because I couldn't finish it. So it's a book series. It's fantasy. It's about an assassin. I really don't want to say what it's about because it's like an 8-book series, and I'll spoil it, you know. But it is incredible. They're really big, long books, but like, it's so good. I blitzed through them. Like, they are like 600 pages, 700 pages each. I love the main character. And I just could not put them down. Like, I read them so quickly.
Hell yeah.
I just couldn't put it down. At one point I was like, I can't stop reading because I don't want to watch TV with my family for dinner because the TV that I'm watching is not living up to how good the book is. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to consume something, it has to be this book because it's just amazing. And so I realized I hadn't recommended them yet, and read those books. I recommended them to a friend and gave her all my books, and she's reading them and she loves them. So it's a good recommendation. This right here is where you're missing out on bonus content. If you want to catch this bonus content, all you have to do is support us on Patreon.
I've got 5 recommendations.
Oh my God. Hell yeah. All right. Hit us. Let's go.
Hit us.
Okay.
Hot takes.
Documentary, Misrepresented on the ABC by Annabelle Crabb.
It's been recommended already on a podcast that hasn't been released yet, but yes.
Instagram account that brings me great joy is 80s Interiors, which is just slide after slide of amazing interior design from the 80s. A food is marmalade. I've been making my own this year because our orange tree is going gangers, and it is so delicious, so tart.
Gangers.
It is so good.
Yum. How good.
Number 4, fiction TV series. I just finished Halt and Catch Fire, which is on SBS right now, but it's from AMC that they did Mad Men and those series. Yeah. And it's awesome. It's 4 series about the early tech world in Texas and Silicon Valley and the development of all of that early technology. And it is kind
of like Mad Men.
Kind of like that, but in tech in the 80s.
Different time period, but that sounds like that's what it would be. Yeah.
Pretty fun.
Okay.
And last one, board game, because you know I love board games.
Hell yeah.
Wingspan. I've been playing a lot of that, and I just got the Oceania expansion with Australian birds, and I'm loving it. So
what's that like?
What is it?
It's a board game about, this is going to sound really nerdy, bird habitats and the types of birds and the types of nests they build and the number of eggs they lay and the type of food they eat, and they all have different
I'm just thinking of Courtney listening to this right now. She's going to be like gagging. She just hates birds.
Yeah,
Anyways,
not one for the ornitho. So, that's my board game recommendation for the month. Pandemic has been...
Can we get monthly board game recommendations from you? Can we make that a segment on our podcast?
I want to get a board game, but you know
I
what?
have...
Nothing is 3-player and good. Nothing.
Wingspan, Everdell, both of those are great 3-player games. Are you thinking versus a 4-player game? Because usually they're built for 4.
Yeah.
Well, he's stuck in lockdown with, there's only 3 of them, so he can't play if they're not fun 3 players.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat, which is why I'm super glad Will can still come over.
Yeah. No, both of those are really good, and they both also have solo mode, which I'm not going to lie, I have been using solo mode, which makes my family laugh at me very much. But I do like a late night solo session of a board game. I find it very meditative and therapeutic to just sit there and play against myself. But both Everdell and Wingspan have great automatic solo player modes.
So is that number 5? That's awesome.
Yep, that's it.
For your breadth of knowledge on recommendations.
Can you send all of those to me?
Yep,
please.
Sure.
I'm going to recommend an artist. I don't think I've recommended them yet. I think you pronounce it Los Leo. It's LOS space LEO. And they make music that is just so great. I'll recommend, this is the song I really want you to listen to. If you like Bon Iver, you're going to like this, I think. He released a low-key EP where he basically did a stripped-back version, but it's still very production-heavy, but it's just like Bon Iver-esque style of his own songs. And the low-key Volume 1 EP from Los Leo. It just sounds like a bunch of random jumbled syllables. But yeah, the first track on that EP is called The End, and it's brilliant. I really like it. So listen to that. And you can listen to the originals too, which are great. They're more poppy and upbeat, but I love the stripped back stuff.
Cool.
Not really stripped back, but it's low key. It's called a low key EP for a reason. Anyway, it's great.
Well, that wraps it up. Thank you so much for chatting to us again, Annie. You're our first person coming back for the second time, but you've done 3 recordings with us.
True. We spent
very grateful.
A lot of time. Yeah, thank you so much for your
my pleasure
nuanced takes.
You're almost, if when in TV shows they make the guest stars can turn into like series regulars.
Yep.
You're on your way from being a guest star to a series regular.
Love to see it.
That's amazing. I'll maybe I can get if I come up with some solid board game, a whole list. That'll find an excuse to just do a board game special.
If you go see HR on your way out, they'll issue you an ID.
Yeah. But thank you. This has been very nice. It has helped. I think it will help a lot of people who are feeling similar to us. So thank you.
All the best.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems. If you liked today's episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. The music is by The Vinyl Press. And that's all that I have to say.
The music is clearly loud in your headphones because you are yelling. No! Share this with your